Hi, my name is K.Thomas, W1DED. Today's guest needs little introduction. His YouTube channel has over 1,300 videos and close to 150,000 subscribers. When it comes to YouTube royalty, Jason Johnston, KC5HWB, is definitely part of the pack. Thanks for joining me, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Well, I appreciate you coming aboard here, and I had called you to ask if you would talk about Parks on the Air, because I'm very interested in your participation in that program and the upcoming plaque event. Before we get into that, I really need to talk to you about Ham Radio 2.0, your YouTube channel. It's amazing what you've done with that. How long have you been creating YouTube videos?
It'll be 8 years this May, so in about 2 months from now, it'll be 8 years.
That's amazing. And what brought you toward that in the first place?
Well, it was I used to sell some radio. I started a radio sales website here in the North Texas area, and at the time we didn't have any ham radio retailers in this area. HRO is here now. They moved in like 2 or 3, 4 years after I had rolled up my website. But anyway, so I started selling radios, and a lot of it focused on the Chinese stuff. And this was back when the TYT TH9800 was brand new. It was a brand new radio at the time. So I got in touch with a sales rep from TYT, and I said, this is what I want to do. And they let me buy some in bulk so that I could sell them at a retail price. And I had other stuff too. That was just kind of like the one that kicked it off. After selling those for a short period of time, and I did a few videos on them too. Well, no, this was before that. So after selling those for a short period of time, I started getting the same question from a lot of different people about programming, how to program it. Well, what do you do with this? I can't get the CTCSS to work. And so I said, okay. So I made a video, and it was ugly. It was an ugly video. I just held my phone here in the shack. I didn't have all this back then, but I sat right there. And I held my phone, no lighting like I have now, no microphone except for the on-camera mic. And I said, hey, this is Jason, grapevineamateurradio.com was my website. Here's how you do this. And I made like a 12 or 15-minute video. I don't remember how it was. It's still up there. You can still see it. It's the first video on my channel. And I said, this is how you program the radio from the front panel. And I went through programming simplex, programming repeater, how to change CTCSS and all that kind of good stuff. That was probably late summer of 2014, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly when it was. I uploaded it to the only YouTube channel I had at the time, and I forgot about it. I would copy the link and send it to, so when I get emails or when I get calls from people, how do you do this? As like, I made a video here, go look at it. Here's the link to it. So about, I don't know, somewhere towards the end of the year, maybe around January of the following year, I went back and looked at it. I didn't look at it for several months. I went back and looked at it, and I don't remember the exact number right now, but it had several thousand views, like 4, 5, 6,000 views, something like that. And I'd sent it to maybe a dozen, maybe a couple dozen people. I was like, I haven't sent this out to 6,000 people. Even if it was 2,000, I haven't seen it out that many. So I started doing some research, and I'm like, maybe there's something to this YouTube thing. So I started doing research on YouTube for ham radio shows. The first show I found was Ham Radio Now with Gary Pierce. And I kind of developed a relationship with him about a year later. Guest appeared on his show a couple times. And I found Ham Nation. Of course, at the time, Ham Nation wasn't on YouTube. They would live stream on twit.tv, and I think that's the website. And then they would repost the show on YouTube. And there was one or two others out there, something like that. So I found those, and I was like, okay, well, I kind of model some of this, but kind of do my own thing. So so in May of 2015, I officially launched Ham Radio 2.0, and the reason I named it that, because people ask that all the time. I'm like, the point or the topic of the channel is to discuss whatever's new in ham radio. So new radios, new modes, new courses that are out, because some of the most popular videos on the channel are my technician and general courses. So every 4 years when those update, I try to get another recording up. And we got one a couple months ago after the question pool updated last July for technician, and we got that recorded. I think it was in November after that. So that's still on the channel right now. And and from there, it's just kind of been learn as you go type thing. So I spent about 2 years haphazardly putting up videos kind of now and then when I thought about it. And then around 2017 or 2018, I started to get really serious about it. And then put a lot of time and effort into researching and what was out there and how to format this and that and the other. And then in 2020, I went full time because I quit my job in lieu of another job. That other job never came to fruition because it was supposed to start right when COVID started. So I told my wife, I was like, I've been wanting to do this full time anyway. I'm going to do it this year. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go get something after this COVID stuff settles down. And I just kept going with it because it worked so well.
Well, before we go too far down the path here, I've got to say, and you may know this from some of my videos, I just got back into the hobby about a year ago. And there were two significant changes that I saw as soon as I turned on the radio. One was Parks on the Air. That just blew me away. This idea that people were operating portably and had that flexibility. They didn't worry about the big station back at home and necessarily have a 100-foot tower. They just were getting out and operating. That was brand new to me. But also YouTube. I mean, back in the day when I was first licensed back in the late 70s, you really need to join a club, meet some other hams locally. They might come by and help you out with an antenna installation or answer some questions, but it was all super local. And what I found right away was I could go on YouTube and get many of my questions answered. If I was looking at equipment, I could get, multiple opinions and then still sort through that. But it really changed my reentry and I think supercharged it. So thank you for being part of that world because you were one of the first channels I subscribed to. So take me back to 2017 and 18. You haven't yet decided to make this a full-time gig, but what was the trigger then that you decided to put more attention into this effort?
Well, I have always I've always had a sort of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to be my own boss. The first job I ever had was to mow lawns. I mowed lawns. I started when I was 12 years old, and a friend of mine that lived down the street, we started together. He was a year younger than me, and we mowed lawns together for 5 years. I didn't have a job for 5 years, and really the only reason I stopped doing that and went and got hired to someone else to get a job, have a boss and a schedule and whatnot, was because in my senior year in high school, I was on the work co-op program. And of course, lawn mowing here in Texas stops in the winter when the grass goes dormant. So you don't mow any lawns between like October and March or April or something like that, usually. So I had to have a job for school. So I went and got a job at a just stupid job at a grocery store at that point in time. But so I've always done that. I had a photography business for a while. I had a couple of other kind of joint adventure, kind of side gigs, what they call side hustles nowadays. I've always had this side hustle, want to work for myself type idea. And when YouTube came along and I started doing a lot of research on it, there were a lot of people, not in ham radio, but just in every other niche in the world that are full-time on YouTube and making a living doing YouTube advertising, marketing, educational channels, entertainment channels, all kinds of stuff like that. So I just kind of figured that if someone was out there doing it already, then it's doable. And it kind of got my interest. And when I started to make the shift around 2017 it was always in the back of my mind to go full time eventually. I did it a lot faster than I thought I would because of my full-time job ending and COVID starting and all that kind of stuff. But I'd always in the back of my mind kind of thought, this would be really cool if I could make this work. I just would never convinced that I really could at that point in time.
So I'm curious, in those early years, now I'm talking about 2017, 18, 19, before you went full-time, what was the strategy? Was it quality, quantity? You've obviously pointed out that it was things that were new, but what was the, I guess in the media business, you'd call it, what was the editorial direction? What were you going after?
You know what? I don't really know. I'm not sure what I was going after. There's if you study YouTube and watch, there's YouTube channels that tell you how to build a YouTube channel. And, there's YouTube channels for everything. We call it YouTube University, right? So if you want to know how to change the intake manifold gasket on a 1978 Ford pickup with this size engine, you go on YouTube and someone's done it somewhere. And there's a video on how to do that, how to change your brake pads, whatever, automotive stuff, cooking, anything. So there are YouTube channels that tell you how to build a YouTube channel and what to do and what not to do and how to do it. And it changes all the time because YouTube changes their algorithm about once a year, maybe a little bit more often than that. So what was working 5 years ago may not work today. But I guess there's a common saying that says get 1% better with every video. So I guess my main goal was just to grow. And I was wanting to grow fast, obviously. But even if I didn't grow fast, if I was growing, then I considered it a success. So if you go back and look my videos from 2017 and 18, and then look at something I posted last week, there's a big difference. It's like almost a different channel. But I mean, that's just growth, and that's how it should be. Anybody who's making the same videos today that they were 6 years ago doesn't understand how YouTube works. So if you want to grow and you want to reach a wider range of audience, then that's what you have to do. And that's kind of the direction that I took with it.
So how often are you producing a video and publishing it?
Right now, I do about 2 to 3 times a week with a new uploaded video and 2 live streams a week. So 5 times if you count the live streams. And if I do what's called shopping videos, where I talk about what sales are going on, what coupons there are in the ham radio world. And I usually do that on Friday. I don't do that every week. So sometimes it's only 2 uploads. I do upload a new video every Monday and Thursday. If I do the shopping video, I'll do it on Friday, sometimes Saturday, and then I'll live stream at noon on Wednesday, noon my time, and then 7 p.m. my time on Sunday nights. So in a regular week, it'd be 5 times a week, including live streams.
And Jason, do you think that there are any other full-timers in the ham radio YouTube space?
I think that there are, yes. I think a couple of the guys who have retired, even maybe at a young age, are full-time on YouTube right now. So yeah, there's 1 or 2 other folks out there that I know of. There may be more than that I don't know of, but that I know of, I know there's probably 2.
But there's nobody else, well, I guess other than Josh, Ham Radio Crash Course, that are in the same league as you, as far as I could tell. I mean, you guys are in the stratosphere, and then you're right. There are a number of other people, whether they're doing it part-time or full-time, that are pushing along at much lower subscription numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of those guys do really good videos. So, another thing you learn by doing YouTube research is that the subscriber count really doesn't matter a whole lot. The amount of views you get per video and the amount of watch time you get per video are much more important than the number of subscribers you have. Now, the subscriber count is, YouTube will tell you, oh, the subscriber count doesn't matter, just get a lot of views. But then YouTube also gives you a silver play button when you get to 100,000 subscribers. They don't give you any awards or plaques or anything when you get a certain amount of views or watch time in your channel. So they say it doesn't count, and it's a vanity metric is all it is. It doesn't really, just because you have a lot of subscribers doesn't mean you have a healthy, growing channel. There's a lot of channels out there that have been abandoned that might be at 500,000 or even 1 million subscribers that people haven't posted to in years, but they're still out there. They still got that number of subs, but they don't really do anything. So, having interaction on your channel, having people come by with comments, even the thumbs down guys, that's more of an interactive thing with YouTube. YouTube likes to see interactive. They like people to stay on the platform. They like people to click on a new video once that video ends. They like the people to watch as much of every video as they can. So if you have that, that's actually a little bit more important than the subscribers. But yeah, I mean, everybody looks at subscribers, even though on paper it's neat looking, but that's about all it is.
Tell me about the live stream. Is that something you enjoy?
I do. Yeah. The live stream's great because it's another time to interact with the audience. Live streams typically do not get the amount of watch time. They're usually not as focused as a regular edited and uploaded video. Of course, my live streams, most of them are about an hour long. Some of them are closer to an hour and a half. And my uploaded videos are 10 to 20 minutes, something like that. So their live streams are much longer. They're great for interacting with the audience in the live chat, doing interviews, that kind of thing, to listen to after the fact. I always rip the live streams, rip the audio out of them and upload them to a podcasting service. So they're great for that. But, typically nobody's going back and watching a live stream on my channel from 2 or 3 years ago. They're kind of a real-time interaction type thing where the edited videos are kind of timeless, or they can be, depending on what the subject is.
Well, again, I'll go back and say thanks. I appreciate all the effort you put into your YouTube channel, and You and many others have really helped me get back into the hobby. So thanks again. And let's segue into Parks on the Air, because that is what I asked you here for. I know you're a pretty active activator, maybe less hunting based upon the stats I see. Looks like you go to Galveston quite often. That might be your favorite park. How did you get involved with the program?
I think it's probably fair to say that Mike, K8MRD, probably got me interested in Parks on the Air. Because he came to Dayton Hamvention, I think it was 2019, and he came up to me and shook my hand and said, "Man, I've been watching a lot of your videos. Thank you for it." Basically the same thing you just said to me. And of course, he had a channel at the time that was fairly new, and I went and I didn't know who he was at the time. He only knew me through YouTube. We didn't really know each other. We're pretty good friends nowadays, but so I went and watched after Hamvention. I went home and watched a few of his videos, and I'm like, man, that Parks in the Air thing looks really fun. And I think it was maybe a few months after that, something like that, that maybe I did the first Parks on the Air that I did. Of course, National Parks on the Air was a thing for ARRL in 2016, and then out of that is how regular Parks on the Air was spawned. So I went back and kind of did some research on that, kind of learned a little bit more about it. But I think I'm fair. I think it's fair to say that I got interested in it because of Mike's videos mostly.
And what do your activations look like, Jason? Are you the 10 QSO guy and move on to the next one, or somebody that sits down and makes 100 QSOs?
My goal is to make 100 QSOs on every activation. Now, the exception to that is if I'm on a road trip somewhere, and I've done this a couple of times, if I'm on a road trip somewhere and I run across a park, or I know I'm going to be by a park and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my stuff and activate this park while I'm in this area, then I'll sit down and I'll make at least 10, sometimes 20 or 30, something like that, and I'll pack up and go. But for the most part, I try to sit down, especially every time I'm in Galveston. I try to get 100 Qs every time I sit down at that one. Any parks that are around me here. The great thing about the Galveston Park, my wife and I own a beach house down there, which is an investment property. We used to have some duplexes up here in the Dallas area that we would rent out on regular 6 and 12-month term leases. We decided to get out of that business several years ago. So we took the money that we made from selling those properties and we invested in one property in Galveston. And now it's a vacation rental. We have it listed on a website with a vacation property management company down in Galveston. But we go down there and stay. And usually it's rented all summer long from like basically Memorial Day to Labor Day. And we try to go down there and stay during the off season when we can. And, but the Galveston Island State Park is about a 7-minute drive from our house down there. And the closest park to me sitting where I am right now is a half hour away. So it's really more of a matter of convenience as to why I go down and go to Galveston State Park and activate it all the time, because I'm just like, it's right there. If I had a park 7 minutes away from my home QTH, I'd activate it all the time too. So there's a couple of parks in the area that I've activated a few times, and I want to start trying to put more effort in some home parks. But yeah, no, I would go, if I were to go tomorrow to activate a park here in this area, I would take an antenna and a radio and make sure I segment out a section, like my whole morning or whole afternoon or something like that. And I'd sit there until I made over 100 contacts. It's usually my goal.
So Jason, you strike me as the type of ham that has a lot of equipment in that room. Is there a go-to kit that you use for POTA, or do you shake it up when you go out?
Right now, and this has changed over time too. Right now, I use my Yaesu FTDX10 every time I go out. That's the one that I grab. I actually have it in a Pelican case, in a hard Pelican case that it sits behind the seat in my truck, and I just leave it there. It's there all the time. For antennas, I change it up. Sometimes I'll use an InFed half wave. I've got a pack antenna. I've got a spark plug gear antenna. I've got a couple of other brands. I've got 2 or 3 that are kit antennas that I've built that are right over here that I need to add wire to and do some tuning with. I'm going to do a video on those upcoming. So the antennas, I try to change it up. The locations, I usually try to change it up. But the radio has, ever since I used to use the 7300 a lot. And ever since I got my FTDX10, I really like that radio so much, I haven't really changed from it much.
And you had told me that you are going to participate in the Parks on the Air plaque event this year.
Yes.
So what does that look like, or have you thought that far ahead yet? Where do you plan on going? How long will you operate? Will you be alone, or will there be others?
No, we'll be Frank and I think Mike and maybe 1 or 2 others will be with me. So that's that weekend is, well, no, I take that back. I'm getting my weekends mixed up. So that weekend we have a spot rented at Ray Roberts State Park, Lake Ray Roberts State Park, which is about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour north of me. And that's we've gone out there 2 or 3 times for Support Your Parks weekend, just kind of at random. April of the last 2 years, I think we've been there. April of the last 2 years we've been there. And so when they did that announcement about the new event on a new weekend this year, the first weekend in June, I'm like, oh, we need to book something. So I went out and booked that immediately. We got a RV spot out there. We'll be camping out for a couple nights and just try to. I mean, the point of it is to have fun. We'll go out there and activate the park, and I'll sit down. I'll make as many QSOs as I can in one sitting, but then I'll get up and let someone else have the radio, and we'll hang out and barbecue some stuff, have some dinner, just kind of sit around the campsite and have fun. So that's really kind of more than anything. It's just a kind of a time to get together and talk about ham radio.
What do you think about the Parks in the Air decision to pull the plaque event out of Support Your Park weekend?
I think it's a good idea because it's grown so much. I mean, when they were doing it as the Support Your Parks weekend in July, it was kind of like POTA was new. And if you go back and look in the last, like 2022 and then 2021 and then 2020, how many thousands of QSOs they made and how much they've grown each year about the total number of QSOs for Parks on the Air. I think it's, stuff, you're going to see more of that, in my opinion, my prediction. You're going to see more of that type of thing being broken out because it's so popular. It's such a big event. It's so many people participate in it that it only kind of makes sense to change it up like that due to growth.
Where do you think Parks in the Air goes in general from here?
I think it's accomplished its goal because the great thing about Parks on the Air is that it's simple to do. In other words, the only really rule is you have to be in the park. And if you're one of these camp hosts that has a home residence in a park, you can't activate from a home residence. You have to be out in the park somewhere. And that's really the only 2 rules that exist. It's great for people who live on HOAs and can't put up antennas at home, or people who live in townhouses or apartment complexes. It's great for the new ham that doesn't know what he wants to put up at his home yet, or if he does want to know if he wants to put up anything at all. It's if you've never done a de-expedition, I've done de-expeditions prior to Parks in the Air. We've been down to Costa Rica about 4 times, and sitting down there and calling CQDX from Costa Rica and working pileups all day long is the most fun I've ever had in being a ham for about 28 years. That's the most fun I've ever had, is working DX pileups. Well, Parks on the Air is about as close as you can get to that inside the United States, because you do work pileups. There's a lot of people who try to work you, and it's easy to rack up contacts that way. So it allows people to know how to see how HF works. It allows people to use the bands when they're open or not. It allows people to set up and to be the DX without having to travel to a foreign country. It allows people to play HF radio where you actually want to talk to somebody. If you're not at home, if you're not able to set up something at home. So I think it's basically accomplished its goal. And I think the goal now, this is my opinion, I don't have any inside information with those guys, but I think the goal now is just to keep that going, because there's been people getting licensed and talking on HF for more than 100 years, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. So now that we've got a new avenue where to do that, where to make HF popular, and it doesn't have to be sideband. You can do CW, you can do FT8, you can do PSK, you can do whatever you want. You can do satellites, you can do kind of whatever you want to. So I think it's going to be I think it just needs to stay where it is. I mean, they'll do some added bonuses to it as well, and growth calculations and whatnot. And I'm sure they'll add new aspects and new features to it, and as well they should. But I think the goal of it was just to get people out and on the air, and as long as it stays in place for that effort, I think it's going to be a win every year myself.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the impression I get is that at this point they're just making sure that it scales. So,
yeah.
I think today there's 35,000 people. It won't be that long to be 70,000
right.
and 100,000. I think that's the direction. How do we make sure the infrastructure holds all this together so more people can participate and enjoy it, and accommodate all of the worldwide parks that are being added at a pretty aggressive rate right now.
Well, and that's a good point. You make a good point there. There's, Parks on the Air started here in the USA, but it's expanded to a lot of different countries, but it's not in every country in the world yet, but they are expanding more and more. So, that's definitely one next step that they are already working on, but that's got plenty of room to grow.
Absolutely. I had the opportunity recently to go down to St. Vincent in the Caribbean and to activate the first Parks on the Air park there. And it was an awesome combination because I was making contacts with a lot of my Parks on the Air friends back in the US and Canada, as well as having a lot of DX that just wanted to get the J8 in their log. So it was this unbelievable combination of operating from a DX country that was fairly well sought after, plus all of the Parks on the Air fans back home that wanted the call.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Can we expect a video from your plaque event weekend?
I imagine that I'll make a video that weekend. Yeah, it might just be us sitting around talking and having fun, but yeah, sure, we'll probably do something like that. So I imagine I'm going to go down there and set up my my Buddy Hex hex beam, which I love using that antenna, and I got a triplexer for it. But that antenna is kind of a pain to set up, do an activation, then tear it down all in one day. But since we're going to be there for a couple of nights, I imagine that's what I'm going to use. So there'll be some videos around that, because it's always a popular antenna, and people can come by and sit down on the radio and talk to us, or talk on the air while we're there. So yeah, I imagine I'll make a video that weekend.
Awesome. I'll be looking forward to seeing it. And thank you for coming today. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I've been talking to Jason Johnston, KC5HWB. You all know his name. You've seen his videos, Ham Radio 2.0. Thanks again, Jason. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot, man.